Hey there, scientists. Mrs. Tripp here. Wanted to give a little fresh take on the rock cycle. Now, remember that the rock cycle is that continuous cycle of change that happens to our rocks over hundreds of thousands of millions of years. We have our igneous rocks, we have our sedimentary rocks, and we have our metamorphic rocks. And as of this point, we've kind of envisioned those connections as a big old circle. But today, we're going to take an in-depth look by creating a new model of the rock cycle to see just how connected everything is within it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this triptastic science tidbit. Triptastic science tidbit. As I said, we've kind of envisioned the rock cycle up to this point as a big old circle. An igneous rock goes through the processes to become sediments, which become sedimentary rock, which goes through its processes to become metamorphic rock, which eventually will melt and become igneous rocks again. But there are actually more complicated, intertangled connections that happen within the rock cycle. Let's break down a new model together and see how all of these processes are actually connected to one another. Now, we know that the rock cycle has no clear beginning, middle, or end to it, so we could pick any point in the rock cycle to begin. Let's start with an igneous rock, for example. Now, let's say my igneous rock is going to be exposed to the elements, so it's going to be weathered and eroded, and once it is weathered and eroded, that's when we get sediments. Eventually, those sediments will stack on top of one another. They're going to go through the process of cementation and compaction, and once they're compacted all together, that's when we get our sedimentary rock. My sedimentary rocks can go through the process as they're pushed further down into the ground of experiencing heat and pressure, and that's when we get our metamorphic rocks. If my metamorphic rock continues to go down underneath the surface of the earth, it's going to get hotter, so it's going to experience that process of melting. Once my rock melts, it becomes liquid rock, which we call magma. That magma can then go through the process of cooling and crystallizing, and that's when we get back to our igneous rock. But wait, there's more. At any given point in this rock cycle, I can have certain rocks experience different processes to kind of jump into different parts of the rock cycle. Take, for example, my igneous rock. How would I get an igneous rock to become metamorphic? If that igneous rock were exposed to the processes of heat and pressure, then my igneous rock would become a metamorphic rock. What about my sedimentary rock? Could my sedimentary rock go through the process of melting and cooling and crystallizing and become an igneous rock? Absolutely. And what about my metamorphic rock? What if my metamorphic rock is exposed to the processes of weathering and erosion? That metamorphic rock would then break down into sediments. Those sediments would be deposited and go through the process of cementation and compaction, and then I've got a sedimentary rock. And there you have it. What we once thought was this simple circle of connections and processes actually turns into this super complicated web of connections that can happen depending on the processes that our rocks experience over time. Those rocks are going to constantly change and be exposed to different processes throughout their rock cycle, if you will. Thanks for tuning in for this triptastic science tidbit, and as always, keep on sciencing. Triptastic science tidbit.